What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Ken, and today, guys, we're going to talk about 10 movies from the year of 1991 that you need to have in your Blu-ray or 4K collection. And I'm excited because I've got some really awesome movies in this stack. As I said in my last video, the 1990, 10 movies from 1990, we are firmly in the 90s, and I could not be more excited because these are movies that I've grown up with and I've just got so much nostalgia for. Now, some of these I will say in this stack, I've watched recently for the first time, so I have not grown up with every single one of these, but most of these I have. But look, before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We talk about Blu-rays and 4Ks and physical media and owning the movies that you love all the time on this channel. So if you like the kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. You will enjoy this channel. And then, turn on the bell notifications. That would be nice too, so you can be updated every single time a Mid-Level Media video drops. So how these videos work, guys, I'm going to take you through each movie. I'm going to show you a Blu-ray or 4K representation of the film, and I'm going to let you know why you should have that in the collection. I'm going to give you a price point as well. Most of the time I use Amazon, but I may use other websites occasionally as well. But look, without further, let's not waste any more time. I always waste too much time. Let's get into it. And what movie do you think of when you think of the year of 1991? Maybe the greatest action movie of all time, maybe the greatest movie of all time, most certainly one of the greatest James Cameron films of all time, and that is Terminator 2. And yes, I am showing the dreaded 4K, and I also got the Steelbook as well. I've got at least 8 or 9 copies of this movie, DVD, VHS. I've got like 3 or 4 Blu-rays. I've got 2 4Ks right here. I got another 4K Steelbook or Blu-ray Steelbook double pack with Total Recall. I've got a lot of copies of T2, and for good reason. This is one of the most important movies to me. I've been watching this movie since I was like 7 or 8. I saw this movie way before I saw the first Terminator movie. This is just the one that I watched first. And then when I watched this movie, like, I heard that Arnold was the bad guy in the first one, and I just never wanted to watch it as a kid. So I didn't watch that movie till I grew up way later. And I love the first Terminator. I think it's great. But this movie is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest action films ever made. You cannot deny that. And I feel like there's some people that might say Terminator 2 is not that good. It's not that good. But when you watch the movie, it's really hard to deny. Like, the first hour, this movie just picks up. It starts, it picks up. The first hour, it just has such a frantic pace to it. It just never slows down. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going until like an hour in. And it's incredible. Such great action, such great concepts in this movie, such a great villain with the T-1000, and I love Arnold in this movie. I love him as the good guy protecting John Connor. And I don't know, it's hard to talk about Terminator 2. It's one of those movies I've just been watching since I was a kid. I love this movie. No problemo. Shut up, dickwad, or whatever he says in the movie. He says something. I used to be a lot better with quotes than I am nowadays. But look, Terminator 2 is an awesome movie. I just remember at the end when the T-1000, they thought they destroyed him, and then he melted and came back together. It was so awesome, so awesome. And then the end with a thumbs up and the melted steel. It's very sad. It's very sad. It's an emotional movie. You know, of course, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor's awesome as well. But Terminator 2, look, it's the 4K. I'm gonna recommend the 4K because it also has the Blu-ray in it. So if you don't like the 4K, look, if you've never seen the 4K, if you're just going off everybody shitting on it, you can watch it for yourself and see how it hits you. I personally had yet to see the 4K of Terminator 2. The last time I watched it was on Netflix, and that was before I owned the 4K. It's been at least 2 or 3 years since I've seen the movie. I've owned like multiple copies of the movie on Blu-ray, so I've seen it on Blu-ray a bunch. And I have not watched the 4K, so I don't know like how bad it is. I haven't seen it, so buy it, make up your own mind, but at least you have the Blu-ray to fall back on. So I will recommend getting this 4K edition. You can get it for $13.99 currently, but keep an eye out on the Black Friday sales and just certain sales. This goes down to $7.99 quite a bit. But of course, this Lionsgate Steelbook, Jesus Christ, look at this thing. You can't beat that. You can't beat that. But Terminator 2, like, God, what can you say about it? It's one of the greatest movies of all time. I said it, 1991, it's over with. We're done talking about T2. Now let's talk about the Addams Family. I love the Addams Family. Got this on 4K last year, was reminded how much I love the Addams Family. Now, I've always liked the Addams Family Values a little bit better. Even as a kid, I used to love watching the Addams Family Values. I really wish they would put that out on 4K as well. But the Addams Family, there's something about it. It's very classic. You know, Christopher Lloyd, it's Fester, you got Raul Julia. Just the entire cast is fantastic in this movie. The family has such a fun dynamic, and the way that it's played almost kind of meta, because they are dropped into this kind of fish out of water scenario. Like everything around them is completely normal, but they are the odd ones out. So it's kind of like the Addams Family versus the world. Which is why I can't really get on board with that new Wednesday show on Netflix. I tried to watch it. I watched the first episode and it was okay, but it's like, it's not the Addams Family. Like Christina Ricci is Wednesday. She will forever be Wednesday. Jenna Ortega wasn't bad, but she's Wednesday to me, and she's just so good. She's definitely one of the shining spotlights in this movie for sure. But this is such a fun movie. It's so funny. Like, you don't think about just how funny it actually is until you sit down to watch it. And then I'm just laughing the entire time. I love the Addams Family. And this 4K looks incredible. So you can get the 4K right now for $19.99. But this is another one that I feel like goes down in price quite a bit. So be looking out for that. But the Addams Family is super fun. It's super kooky. And it's super spooky. And this is the more Mamushka edition. So you get more of the dancing sequence in this one on 4K. That was exclusive to 4K. So there you go. Let's talk about it. Look, I don't talk about animated movies too much in this series, but we got to talk about this movie, because this was nominated. This animated movie was nominated for Best Picture, and that doesn't happen very often. So let's talk about Beauty and the Beast. Came out in 1991. This is a huge animated film. People love this movie, so much so that when they did the remake, the live action remake, this movie became like in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, because so many people had so much nostalgia for this movie. Admittedly, it's never been one of my favorite Disney animated movies. It is a great Disney animated movie, but even as a kid, I loved watching Aladdin. I loved watching The Lion King, but whenever it came time to watch Beauty and the Beast, I never truly got into it. It was always kind of like one I felt like I just had to get through. Because I would binge like the animated stuff all the time when I was like 4 or 5. But I don't know, but it's still a fun movie. It's still a great movie. It's still well done. And again, it's very significant because it was nominated for Best Picture. And that does not happen very often with the animated film. So Beauty and the Beast is spectacular. Now, I only own this on Blu-ray. And the Blu-ray is $19.99. But the 4K, I'm going to go ahead and plug here, because that is $19.39. So the 4K is actually cheaper for Beauty and the Beast. So I do recommend that you go ahead and get the 4K. I haven't seen the 4K, but I imagine it does look better as far as the picture quality than the Blu-ray. So yeah, Beauty and the Beast, great film. Let's talk about a Ron Howard film, Backdraft, with Kurt Russell. I remember watching this movie. Used to scare me. Like, this really scared me. I remember watching this movie. I don't know if you guys remember it. I'm sure that everybody had this, but like at school, the fire department would come to your school and they would take you out like into a little trailer, and then you would sit there and listen to the firefighter talk about the fires and how dangerous they were and stuff, and how you needed to hold your hand against the door to feel if it was warm or not, to see if the fire was there. So I remember like being scared and freaked out by that. And at the same time, maybe I was freaked out by that because I had seen Backdraft, or vice versa. Maybe I was more scared of this because of that. But anyway, that's just a memory. Those two things like go together. But this movie used to scare me. Like, this movie, I feel like, and I have not watched this 4K yet. And this is the Steelbook. There's a regular edition as well. I think this was a Best Buy exclusive Steelbook as well, but it's a really awesome Steelbook. I'll show you that flaming axe on the back is really cool. But yeah, I've not seen this movie in a long time, but I remember this movie scaring the crap out of me when I was a kid. The way it shows fire and portrays like fire, almost like a villain in this movie, and it's scary as hell. So Backdraft, I would absolutely recommend. I really need to revisit this one because it's probably been 20 years since I've seen it. But Backdraft's a hell of a movie, hell of a Ron Howard movie. So definitely add that one to your collection. You can get that on 4K, just the standard 4K, because I don't know if the Steelbook is still in stock, for $22.99 right now. So not a bad deal at all. Now let's talk about a movie that I watched pretty recently. I watched it about a year ago for Buddy Cop Month, and that is The Hard Way. And this is a movie starring Michael J. Fox and James Woods. This is a really fun movie. You know, Michael J. Fox is an actor, and what he's trying to do is he's got a part as a cop, and he's trying to pretty much like method act, and he's going and hanging out with James Woods, who's a cop, and trying to pick up some tips from him to better play his character, his cop character in the movie. So you have this dynamic of Michael J. Fox not really knowing what the hell he's doing, and James Woods just being like super annoyed with him the whole movie. So it's a fun movie. It's got some really cool like you know, action sequences and stuff in it. There's a really cool thing that happens at the end with Michael J. Fox. They're like up on top of like a building and like hanging off and stuff. So there's some cool things that happen in this movie. It's a fun movie. Michael J. Fox, I want to own all his movies in my collection at some point. But The Hard Way was certainly fun. This is a Kino Lorber edition. You can get it right now for $13.49. But the Kino sale is going on right now currently. So I imagine you can probably get this one if you get on the Kino Lorber website for about $8.99. But The Hard Way is super fun for sure. I would recommend that. And we could let's talk about a couple movies that not many people will be able to get on Blu-ray, but they came out in 1991. They need official Blu-ray releases, but I have some bootleg copies of them. We'll say that. I'm not going to say where I got them, but if you've seen a recent subscriber unboxing, you might know. But Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead and What About Bob? These movies, again, these are not official Blu-ray releases, but they need official Blu-ray releases. They need Shout Factory editions. They need Vinegar Syndromes. Tell me how cool a Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead Vinegar Syndrome 4K edition would be. That would be freaking awesome. They did drop that Fred. They need to do Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. I mean, What About Bob? That's classic. Bill Murray, Richard Dreyfuss, come on. Both came out in 1991. Let's talk about LA Story. This came out on Blu-ray, I believe at the end of last year. It's about a year ago this movie came out. This is a really fun movie. It's kind of portrays the LA lifestyle. You got Steve Martin in this movie. It does feel like very early 90s. It almost feels 80s because, I mean, it was almost back in the 80s. But it's a fun movie. I did enjoy this one. And look at this. It's got a really nice slipcover. This is I believe a Lionsgate release. But yeah, Steve Martin, again, like Michael J. Fox, I would like to own all the Steve Martin movies in my collection at some point. Really good movie, really fun movie, really good cast. Sarah Jessica Parker's in this movie, very young Sarah Jessica Parker. So you can get this right now for $10.99. So it's not a bad price at all to get LA Story. And you might honestly still get the slipcover because I don't know how well this one sold when it came out. Okay, now let's get some horror in here. How long have I went without actually bringing up horror? Because I always recommend tons of horror titles for this year. I feel like I'm not going to recommend horror as much in the 90s as the 80s because I'm not going to say horror died in the 90s. There was definitely some really great horror films. We got one more too that we're going to talk. I think there's a couple that we'll talk about here, but it definitely was not as thriving in the 90s as it was in the 80s. So there's going to be a lot less horror for me to discuss of significance in the 90s, I feel like. But we got to talk about People Under the Stairs. And I finally I ordered this in the recent like Shout Factory Shocktober sale. And I just got it in. I really wanted to watch this one in October. Me and my wife had it on our 13 Days of Horror list. We didn't get a chance to because it came in late and I just got this one in. But I remember this movie. It used to freak me out when I was a kid. This movie scared me, but I remember watching it all the time. I love this movie so much. So really looking forward to revisiting it. I would say, to be honest, like this is probably top 5 Wes Craven. I feel like. I mean, I know he did 4 Scream movies, Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street, the first 2 Scream movies, I would probably put above it, but I would probably put People Under the Stairs maybe right behind those. And I'm trying to think if there's any other like big Wes Craven. I'm sure there's, but I'm not a big fan of The Hills Have Eyes. I'm not a big fan of Last House on the Left. And there's a few Wes Craven movies that I have not seen, but People Under the Stairs is awesome. And I would recommend this movie to anybody. Really great performances in this movie as well. Just really scary, terrifying people and characters in this movie. From what I remember. So I really need to revisit it. $13.60 right now. You can get this Shout Factory exclusive edition. That's the original poster art. Let me show you the the reversible artwork. And I was kind of surprised when I was going through everything that this came out in the 90s, because I thought this was an 80s horror movie until I started to dig into it. And I was like, well, this one came out in 1991? I got to talk about People Under the Stairs. All right, let's talk about some comedies. I love this franchise. I love it so much. I grew up with this franchise. I think I saw this in the theaters. I have specific memories of my aunt taking me to see this movie in the theater. But The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. I didn't even remember that was the title of it. But yes, I remember seeing this in the theaters. I probably didn't get any of the jokes that were going on, but I've been watching these movies since I was a kid. I'm a huge fan of the Naked Gun movies, so have to recommend Naked Gun 2.5. It is a super fun movie, great comedy, and you can get this on Blu-ray right now, guys. And I mean, these are spoof comedies, and this is back when they knew how to do spoof comedies. They made them timeless. They didn't tie them to a bunch of like current event. There's some current events jokes in here for sure. They didn't tie everything to like current event stuff. They were very smart, and they made the comedy work in any time period. Regardless of when you watch this movie, the comedy in the Naked Gun movies and Airplane and Top Secret are all still relevant today, and they all still hit, and you can all relate to them. But yeah, great spoof comedy for sure. Love this movie. You can get it on Blu-ray for $14.45. I was lucky enough to find this, and I believe the third one at a thrifting store they were both $3 a piece. So I got lucky to get both of those on Blu-ray for super cheap. But yeah, Naked Gun 2.5, had to recommend that one when I saw it came out in 1991. These last two mean a lot to me. I've been watching these movies for a very long time. They are some of my favorite movies of all time. And let's pull out the first one. It is Hook. It is Hook. Looky, I got a hooky. Rufio. I love Hook. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. I don't care what anybody says about this movie. I'm pretty sure it's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but who gives a damn about what Rotten Tomatoes thinks? This is one of the greatest movies of all time, in my opinion. I love this movie. But I have such a like childhood nostalgia and just emotional attachment to this film. I've just always loved it. I love Robin Williams. Like he was such a big part of my childhood, and he's so great in this movie. Just going from like the angry, grumpy father figure businessman type, and then having to recapture his youth and re-find himself and just discover his inner Peter Pan. It's such a magical experience, and I have not seen this movie in a little bit. I need to rewatch it. Also, you gotta talk about Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook. He is so good. He is scenery chewing for sure. He's chewing up all that scenery. It is a very over-the-top performance. Maybe that's why critics didn't like it. I don't know, but I think he's so good. I love Captain Hook in this movie. I love Dustin Hoffman and Julia Roberts. Bob Hoskins as Shmi is incredible as well. And I love everything about this movie. It was always such a magical experience to watch this movie when I was a kid. So yeah, Hook, top 5 Spielberg movie for me. I haven't seen every Spielberg movie, but this has a serious like emotional attachment to me. Like this makes up, like there's just some movies that are just embedded in your film loving DNA. And this is one of those movies. I mean, it's up there with E.T. Like I always talk about E.T. and loving that movie. Also Jurassic Park, like it's up there. I love Hook so much. And I'm not like a big Peter Pan fan. Like I remember liking the cartoon when I was a kid, but I wasn't like a huge fan until I saw this movie. So Hook is awesome. This is the 4K. Admittedly, I had not watched the 4K. I don't know how it looks, but I will say that Sony did this. So I'm sure that this looks fantastic. $21.99 right now if you want to get this on 4K, but Hook is fantastic. I don't know what are people talking about when they say Hook's not good. I don't get it. But this last movie that I'm going to recommend to you guys, look, I had to go out with a bang, and this is one of the greatest movies of all time. This movie won Best Picture in 1991, and it's a horror movie, and that rarely happens. Horror is rarely recognized at the Oscars, but this movie won Best Picture. I'm sure you guys know what I'm going to say right now, but The Silence of the Lambs. Did the lambs stop screaming? Of course we got to talk about Silence of the Lambs. Came out in 1991. Are you guys kidding me right now? One of the greatest horror movies of all time. Every time I watch this movie, I'm in awe. I cannot believe how good this movie is. And this movie, again, another one I've been watching since I was a kid, Hannibal, freaked me the hell out when I was a kid. You know, Buffalo Bill was scary as hell. Like, and it's really incredible to think about a movie that has two of the most iconic horror villains in it. Like, two of the most iconic horror villains are in the same movie. Neither of them feel like they share screen time with each other, and both of them feel like they get the appropriate amount of time to shine. It's just such a masterful film, directed by Jonathan Demme. Anthony Hopkins, like, is there a better horror performance than Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter? If you have one, not one that's just as good, but do you have anybody that's better than Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter as far as a horror performance? Leave that in the comment section below, because I'd be hard pressed to find anybody that's better than Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Like, that is the greatest horror performance in my opinion. He is so good in this movie. Jodie Foster is awesome in this film as well. I love her as Clarice, but I don't know, there's just something really awesome about this movie. It's one of the best movies ever made, and I don't want to hear no crap about this not being a horror movie. It's absolutely a horror movie. I'll take that to my grave. Some people will be like, well, it's not really a horror movie, it's a crime thriller. It's a crime thriller? Are you kidding me? Sure, crime thriller. Okay, it is obviously a horror movie. Hannibal Lecter is a horror icon. I rest my case. There are horrific elements in this movie. Hannibal Lecter wears somebody's face on his face. Like that, there are obvious scenes of horror in this film. It is obviously a horror movie, so I will not take any of those comments down below. Silence of the Lambs is a horror movie. I love this movie. You can get it for $27.99. This is the Kino Lorber 4K, and in my opinion, it looks fantastic. Love Silence of the Lambs, and there you have it, guys. That is my list, my 10 movies from 1991 that you need to have in your 4K Blu-ray collection. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like button. Comment down below, guys. I know there are way more movies from 1991 that came out. Let me know what some of your favorites are in the comment section below. There were definitely a lot that I skipped over, either because I'm saving them for a part 2 or I actually don't have in my collection. I'm shocked at how many of these movies from 1991 that I grew up with that I don't have in the collection. So let me know your favorite recommendations in that comment section below. And also be sure to click, I'm going to try to put the playlist, but I've done several years of recommendations, like all the way through the 80s. I did 1979 as well. So we're going to take this all the way through 2022. So definitely click on those and watch my other recommendation videos from a specific year. So appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.